So our goal in this video is to build this blue section, and I think it will be a little bit of a longer video because one, we have to move the images over to our directory as well as the fonts that we have to set up for this kind of stuff. And so there'll be some stuff involved, some like one-time investment kind of deal. But also we're going to talk about our approaches. What are our options here? So I think there's two options, and I think, or at least the ones I'm thinking of, and I think I'm leaning towards the second option. So the first option is having very, very granular components. What do I mean by that? This would be like an image component. It would have its own Astro file. We have a title component, have a paragraph component. Maybe this has multiple versions of the same paragraph component, depending on the props you set, like maybe a bold over here. And then we can compose those components to create these columns. Maybe the columns are components as well. Maybe the section is a component as well, also. And that definitely works. And maybe the advantage of doing it that way is that if you have a website that has a lot of very similar components, then you're roughly done because you don't have to really worry about, building every single section in isolation, because if most sections are very similar to this, have some variations here and there, you build all the components, all the different variations, and you can compose them and build the entire site. That's kind of the approach we took over here, which is why it looks like that. So for example, over here, we have the, this title over here. We have, these columns over here. This could be 2 columns, it could be 4 columns, it could be 8. It doesn't actually matter. There are some validation rules to set how many columns you can have, that kind of stuff. But in general, this is the approach we took over here. And the reason why is because, well, if you're building content in the CMS, well, I, as the programmer, have no idea what will be used. So we can only define, we have to define the components before the content can be added in Contentful. Otherwise, how would the data be used, right? And so now we're moving to a situation where we actually are in the code. We can actually do whatever we want, right? And so the data and the components can be built together, right? And so as a result, we can take a second approach, which is building every single section as its own component. Not, for example, not every piece of the section as its own component, but we can make it like this is the section, right? And what's nice about that is that, if you want to make a change, you're not going to affect other sections, right? If I have a granular approach, this title over here might be used over here. The font size, let's see this. Can we see the font size? Like 25.7. Over here is 22.4, right? So how would we make that work, right? So it's very similar but different. And so if we say, hey, you know what, this title over here is not going to be shared across this one, then we don't have to worry about, hey, if we increase the font size over here, what other changes would happen on the site? Like what other areas of the site would be affected by the change? And it might be hard to predict, especially if the site gets bigger and bigger, what those changes might be. So I guess I would propose for now, we just focus on individual stuff. And what the trade-off will be is we have complete control of whatever we want to do for every single section, but we lose consistency, right? So maybe there's a rule, like a goal for us to say, hey, you know what, every title should be exactly the same for some reason, right? We would lose that. And so it could be possible that over time, the design of different sections diverge, right? So that's up to us to decide how to do it. So we have the ability to make sure that we don't diverge, but I think that's kind of at least how I'm thinking of it, the trade-offs between the two approaches. One is you are forcing a little bit of consistency at the cost of having different variations, large variations of design, different sections. And the other side is you can have very, very custom sections, but you might not have a consistent design across each of the sections. So let's go with option 2, I think, because we have the freedom to do what we want. And of course, if our minds change, we can always go back into say, you know what, let's go isolate the different components, and we can feel, use our feelings to judge if we are doing what we think we should do. Okay, so let's get started over here. What we're going to do first is I want to call this component I want to just call it Community Advocacy Education. So I did also rename this directory components with an S. As after I watched the video previously, I realized, oh, I should have done that in the beginning. So let's go rename this over here. I'm going to call this Community Advocacy. And what was the last one? Education. Maybe not the best name. Naming is hard, of course. And I'm going to delete these things over here. Let's delete all that stuff over here too. This is renaming the imports over here, but the name over here stays the same. Let's call this Community Advocacy Education. And we have no props. First thing we're going to do is make a section. Okay. And let's roughly put the HTML we want. I guess, first of all, we're going to just move the images over. So if I do over here, I have the images of my downloads. You can see that over here. Boom. What happened? Oh, I already moved it, right? Did I move it? I guess it is not there. I guess I removed it and then deleted it. So I got to re-download it, which I'll do later. Okay, so I have a section which will have 3 columns. And so I can use divs. And I think the name for this is going to be like division, like a division of a section of UI. So I have 3 columns, and I do this. And what I want to do is have an image in each one of these columns, followed by some kind of title, followed by some paragraphs. Let's copy this over here. Interesting. And do we want to make this an H2? I think so, because this is right here. We have this H1 over here. This will be H2, H2 as well. And then we have a paragraph. Okay, so we know that this part over here will be strong. The bold part over here, which is we can wrap this in a strong over here. And this will be a link. Let's say so we're wrapping this, I guess like in HTML, we're wrapping certain elements of copy in different HTML tags and giving them attributes. This one over here is a link, and we'll see how that looks soon. But right now, we can just save and format it. And we save community over here. And it's going to look horrible. When we first render this, it's going to look completely different than what we want, which is totally fine. So let's copy this actually. Okay. Okay. So we have this over here, 3 columns, and let's go see what it looks like. It's going to be completely awful. Oh, never mind. Okay. So we see, like, number 1, there's no columns at all. number 2, wait, did I miss my third column? I missed my third column. Okay, great. 3 columns, but they're not actually columns. They're actually rows over here. I got this astro. Let's delete that astro over there. That's not what we want. And it's looking completely awful. So what can we do? So what we want to do is first add some styling. So the first thing we're going to do is learn about how can we make this into columns, right? So it's actually not going to be too bad. CSS, of course, is a large topic, but what we can do is actually have a little tool like this I can use to extract the color. Nice. So what I do is put a background color in this section. I'll put some styling over here. We saw styles before. So we have a section. And by the way, if you want to learn about the rules of how to do styles in Astro components, there's a whole section about CSS and styling over here, which I recommend reading, how it scopes styles. And then, of course, if you're learning about how to do like CSS from scratch in general, the best course I've found is this one over here. It's a paid course. Let's see like how much it is right now. $3.99, which is expensive, but at the same time, will literally teach you completely everything about CSS from zero to hero. It does say like for JavaScript developers, which maybe seems like you got to be a JavaScript expert to know this stuff, but no, I took the course myself. It is not a it's not it's your JavaScript knowledge or experience, I would say in general, is not necessary. It teaches you from the absolute basics and in a hands-on way. So what I'm doing over here is like very intimidating or scary. I would say just number one, remember that we're not focusing on how to build components from scratch right now. We're focusing on just observing and seeing how things are looking, how these sausages made, so to speak. And then if you want to learn deeper, there's other ways to do it. So we're going to put a background color over here. We have we want to make this so that we have these columns. So the way we do this is display flex. And every single div, we're going to say like this is like this, is going to be a flex 0, 0. Let's say like it can grow. Yeah. 1, 1, 33%. Let's do that. So each column will be 33%. Now that's not exactly a third, but will grow to be a third. And also allow shrinking as well. So now let's just see what that does. Now we have a blue. We're getting close, you know, it's not that great, but getting close. We don't have the images, of course. Let's put the alt on the images so we can see what that does. You know, we can see like, oh, that's where that comes from. Like, hey, the image did not render, but we have a fallback. And the fallback is the alternative text, which is over here. Of course, you know, the alt text is very important for things like folks who are not using like laptops. Like for example, a screen reader who doesn't render but doesn't render images will actually read images. Also, like search engines, which are ranking your sites on Google, will use the alt text as a description for the image as well as the file names. So definitely spend time over there to put descriptive names over there. Okay, so we want to make sure now that the font is accurate. So let's go back to over here. Can we see this? This is the League Spartan. I think I opened this over here, League Spartan. League Spartan over here, yeah. And so what is the actual weight of the font? I'm not sure if it says over here, but just eyeballing it, we see it looks like this, and we can type it in here. Let's actually type in community and see which one starts to look. It looks like this one to me. It could be bold. Let's see, is it actually a little skinnier or is it a little bit bolder? Let's go see. Okay, I think it's a little bit bolder, maybe even more bolder than that. Is it black? Let's look at this U over here and this N and the I. Okay, let's see that. No, I think it's not. Anyway, this is not my skill. So I think uh, it's going to be roughly this, but the point is that you know how to change it so that in case it's something different or when I change our minds later on, we know what to do. So what we do is we go to Google Fonts, we find the font we want, and we go to the view selected families. Wait a minute. This is our button over here to get the font. Remove font family. Got it. So get font. Okay. Which one do I want? How to use? I think I just click on this one over here. I think there's another font. Get embed code. All right. So I think I say this is saying like give me all the different font sizes, font weights. I mean. Wait, where's the? Okay. I don't want all of it. So how do we filter out weight? One value. Boom. Bold. Okay. And let's do this over here. One value, 400 for now. Copy code. Okay. So we go here and well, we need to know where we're going to put our like global styles. For now, we don't have to worry about that. We're going to just put it here. We're going to have multiple pages. So of course, like we want to share that stuff, but for now, we don't have to worry about that. So we put this code over here. And now we have downloaded the fonts, right? So what is this? Font weight 70, so 100. I'm not sure what this is about, but we'll look at it later. I wonder if this is getting too much. Two styles, italic 0. Anyway, we can use this over here. So this is going to be the, how do we decide, okay, now we get download the fonts, but we want to assign certain UI to use that font, right? So over here, we go back to our section. We know that every single div has an H2, and we want the styling to be like this. Go look at it, see what it looks like. Boom, we have that now. Now we want to see, what about this font? This is DM Sans. Okay, let's see how that looks. I think it's going to be a 400. Let's see what that looks like. So back to, can I see this? Reset all. One value, 400. One value again. Let's do this. Oh, there's no options here for italic. Yeah, Roman. Good. I guess that's the same thing we had before. Just in case. Okay, so now we have this one over here for the other font, for the paragraphs. So we have an H2, we have a paragraph. And we can see like this some hierarchy over here. This is the entry point, the section. This is the div. We're saying like direct child over here. It's like not just any div, but it has to be directly descending from here. And then any H2 inside there will have this styling. Any paragraph inside here will have that styling. And now the question is this also DM? But it's probably a little bolder. So let's do the bold over there. Full axis. Can I not do, okay, I want to do this and also bold. I wonder if that's semi-bold. I think it might be bold. But again, we can always change it. Oh, interesting. I can only do full axis or one. I guess maybe there's a reason for that. Google Fonts has changed a little bit since the last time I used it, so I'm not sure, like, is it more performant to get all of the range or two, right? So it's like it's either one value or everything. So variable fonts are kind of new, at least they're newly supported, and so maybe this is such that, you know, maybe it's more performant now to just download this one recommendation over here, and you get all the different variations. So we'll do that over here. Okay. And so we can say the weight, whatever weight we want. And so here we have, anytime we have a strong, we're going to say the font weight will be 700. See how that looks over here. Okay, and we see the links inside of there are purple, but that's not what the design is. So we're going to see any links, color, inherit, and we'll just be explicit text decoration underline. If we say none, then we see there's no underline over here, but it's still link, which is hard for the user to know. So what we can do is explicitly say we want the underline, which I think is default anyway. So if we didn't include that line over here, it would be the same, yep. But I like to be explicit sometimes. Okay, so, I mean, you can squint and see like how it's coming together. Of course, you know, what about the this weird border over here? Well, we got to take care of this by saying, well, we can put a style and say body margin 0, which gets rid of all the spacing around that area. And we want to have a gap. What's the gap over here like? Is there a way to know the distance? It might have to be visual. Sometimes what I do is I'll like screenshot this section and then include that screenshot in the website with an opacity of 50% to like make sure that my design and the actual like mock is matching. Now, like, because, you know, you'll be doing this with your own design eyes and understanding like what you want, that's probably not the approach that you would take. But for me, with no real like natural talents for design, we'll have a hard time like understanding the differences. So what I do, like I do that a lot too, but I won't do it here. Let's go roughly put a gap over here between these two things. So how do we do this? Put a gap between these things. Actually, the gap will be on this area over here. So gap will be, I think, let's say 30 pixels, which will be 30 pixels of space between each of these columns, which is like it's constant space, right? So if you look at the current website, if you were to scale it, it kind of keeps its design no matter what the viewport is, right? So we could do something like that as well. Like you can see the font is actually getting smaller. Actually, it's not getting smaller. Some stuff is getting smaller, but not everything is getting smaller together. So we'll talk about that later in another video. For now, let's just get it roughly working. So we have this over here. Our links are clickable, but they're not actually doing anything. So you click on it, it actually reloads the page, but like there's no path, so we're gonna go to the same place. Okay, let's get the images. One thing to actually, we'll stop here. I'll re-download the images in the next video, and we'll talk about images. I think deserve their own video because there's going to be quite a bit over there.